Fake cops knocked on my cabin door. They had no idea I'm the state sheriff. Some people wear uniforms for power. Me, I wore mine for 32 years to protect people from folks like them. I'm Elijah Rhodes, state sheriff of Broward County. Or I was until 6 months ago, when I traded flashing lights and courtroom summons for a quiet life in the mountains. I bought a small cedar cabin 2 hours outside the city, nestled where the blue jays sang louder than traffic, and my closest neighbor was a half-mile down a gravel path. I didn't think retirement would come with harassment. It started with a knock. Not the polite kind. The kind of knock that rattles your windows and says, "We're not here to ask. We're here to take." It was 7:42 p.m. I remember the time because I just poured a glass of bourbon and set a steak to sear when the pounding started. I opened the door to see four people in mismatched uniforms. One carried a clipboard. Another had a cheap radio buzzing static. And front and center, a woman I'd never met, tall, sour-faced, and loud. Karen Mercer. "Good evening," she snapped without a smile. "We're from the Fox Ridge HOA Enforcement Task Team. You violated several codes by building unpermitted fencing and installing unregistered floodlights. You need to step outside so we can conduct an inspection." I blinked, then chuckled. "There's no HOA out here," I said calmly. "We created a provisional enforcement committee," she said, eyes narrowing. "Due to your property's visibility from the trailhead, it falls under our jurisdiction. Refusal to comply will result in a citation and property seizure request." I didn't answer. I stepped inside, grabbed my wallet, and pulled out my badge. The mood changed like the air before a thunderstorm. "State sheriff," I said quietly. "Retired. But my authority still applies. And so do the laws you just broke." Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The man with the radio stammered, We didn't know this is just community enforcement. Impersonating a peace officer is a Class 6 felony." I said, "Trespassing, threatening seizure. This isn't community enforcement. This is a con." They backed away, muttering. Karen barked, "This isn't over," then turned and stormed off, knocking over a flower pot with her boot. The others trailed behind. I thought it was over. I was wrong. The next morning, I found tire marks across my garden, a chain wrapped around my front gate, and a note taped to the door. "We warned you." That was war. I called in a favor. Old friend at the Attorney General's office. I gave him everything: license plates, photos, the clipboard I'd snagged with HOA Ordinance D12 scrawled in crayon red ink. We started digging. Turns out, this wasn't Karen's first HOA scheme. She'd run 2 fake associations in the past, both dissolved after complaints. But this time, she'd built something bigger, roping in volunteers from nearby towns, giving them fake uniforms, and handing out authority in exchange for loyalty. And she'd targeted more than just me. A Vietnam vet 3 plots down had his solar panels smashed for being a visual blight. A Latina single mother got an eviction notice for cultural clutter after her children drew chalk on their sidewalk. None of them knew how to fight back. That's when I called in my old unit. We met in my cabin that Friday. 5 former officers, now lawyers, detectives, investigators. We mapped every report, every known enforcer, and every false ordinance Karen had issued. The local DA who once served under me agreed to quietly launch a parallel investigation. While they built the case, I gave a town hall talk, not as sheriff, but as a neighbor. I told them who Karen really was, what she'd done, and how many had stayed quiet out of fear or shame. One woman cried. Another man stood up and offered to testify. Then came the twist. We set up hidden cameras around my property. On a rainy Tuesday, Karen returned with 2 others to finish the job. What she didn't know was that one of her enforcers had flipped. He wore a wire, gave us everything. They planned to damage my roof and leak floodwater inside to trigger an emergency seizure. Said it was part of neighborhood cleansing. That was the final nail. Within 48 hours, the sheriff's department raided her home and storage unit. They found uniforms, printed citations, HOA fine books, even voice recordings bragging about making people disappear in paperwork. Karen was arrested on 6 felony counts, including impersonation, conspiracy, and property destruction. Her face was all over local news. Fake HOA leader tried to intimidate state sheriff, ends up in real jail. Her enforcers, two got probation, one turned witness. The rest vanished, and the town changed. We created a real community alliance, not to control, but to protect. We held monthly gatherings, taught folks how to spot fake authority. We installed signs, "This neighborhood knows the law." Do you people smiled more, spoke louder? One boy asked if he could become a deputy someday, said his grandma told him Sheriff Rhodes scared the devil out of a Karen. I laughed, but deep down, I was proud. Sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it stands on a porch with muddy boots and a badge that still means something. The end.